Welcome back, you guys. I am so excited for my guest today. This is somebody that's turned into a friend. I met over a couple months ago at a mastermind, and she's so like-minded. And we decided we're bringing each other on each other's podcast. I have Dr. Amie Hornaman here. And what's even funnier is we know a lot of people over the last few decades. I'm surprised our paths haven't crossed until now. All right, welcome to the show, Amie. So Amie is a thyroid fixer, and we are going to talk all about thyroid today. So how did you get into this? How did this become your specialty?
Yeah, so we all have a pain to purpose story, right? So mine started 20 plus years ago. I was doing figure competitions and doing some fitness modeling too, and always had to diet down. I do not come from a skinny family whatsoever. I come from a family with obesity and diabetes. So I would always have to work my butt off, but I was always kind of into fitness, and that competition was perfect for my type A personality. So no problem, being strict with the diet, dieting down, going to the gym twice a day, no problem at all. So it was probably like the 10th competition that I had done. I knew what to do. I had a coach, had a trainer, all that good stuff. And I started putting on weight instead of losing, like you're supposed to when you eat broccoli and chicken and asparagus and fish. And the scale kept going up. I honestly stopped weighing myself after it crested 20 plus pounds. I didn't want to know anymore. And I went to a variety of doctors, 6 total, who all of them said, you're normal, air quotes, normal, fine, eat less and exercise more. When I heard that, I was like, you're kidding me. I can't. It's not even possible to eat less than what I'm eating. I would bring in my diet to these doctors. They wouldn't even look at it. One of them was late for his Christmas party, and all of them misdiagnosed me. And I was crying in my car. I was frustrated, no answers. I honestly just wanted somebody to tell me I had something majorly wrong with me. So I knew, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's why I'm tired. That's why I'm losing hair. That's why I'm gaining weight nonstop and can't lose it. And then finally, the 7th doctor touched my throat and said, swallow, and said, you have goiters on your thyroid, and we're going to do an ultrasound, and you have hypothyroidism, probably Hashimoto's. We're going to start you on a medication, which was Thyroid. So, of course, I'm pumped. I'm like, yes, there's an answer. I'm going to start a medication. This is going to be it. I'm going to have my answers. Everything's going to change. And then it didn't. So I gave it 5 months. And I honestly, every time I tell the story, I laugh. I can't remember if I had a gateway big ass computer or not, but somehow, remember though, they're huge.
Yes.
Totally. We all had them. And I think at the time I did some research. If not, I was at the library with microfiche. I don't even know. But I found this thing called T3 and all these articles of T3 and T4 working together. And those are the 2 thyroid hormones that the thyroid gland makes. And I took it back to her and I said, look, there's this T3 thing. Back then I'm green. I don't know any of this. I wasn't into functional medicine yet. There's this T3 thing, and I'm taking Synthroid, and apparently T3 and T4 work really well together. Can we do that? And she goes, no, I don't do that. I do T4 only. I go, okay, well, I'm going to find somebody who does. And I kept hearing the name of this functional doc, kept hearing the name over and over and over again. And I'm like, okay, finally, that's the universe telling me you got to go. So I go. This guy changes my life, does the right testing, puts me on the right meds, does my supplements, nutrition, everything to fit me, and literally gave me my life back. And from that point on, it changed my career trajectory. He's now my mentor. I'm actually going to see him when we go down to Tampa for the mastermind. So he is my mentor, and I owe it to him for where I am right now. He encouraged me to, keep going education-wise, get my master's, get my doctorate, go to functional medicine. And now I'm here helping people go through the same thing that I went through, hopefully avoid the frustrations that I went through.
But isn't that the truth? I feel like everybody, and I've always said that, they end up on Synthroid and they're still exhausted. They're still overweight. They're still losing hair. They still have all the classic thyroid numbers. And then they go in and they do their lab tests with their PCP, and they come back and they're told that they're fine. Yep. Right? It's so frustrating. Yep. So let's deep dive in. When you're working with somebody, then what are you looking at? What are the different numbers? Because, I've just had the very similar experience too, right? And when you said you stopped looking at the scale, that was for me. Back in August when I met you guys, I was I am the fattest I've ever been. And I don't like this. And I'm not sure what's going on because these are how many calories I'm eating each day. I'm still working out and I'm puffy and I'm swollen and I'm exhausted. And so finally, when I got my numbers back, like you were probably the first person that I texted with the numbers. Like I told you the other day, I like literally,
Drop.
yeah,
Yeah.
I took a screen. You guys would laugh. I seriously took a picture, ran into the bathroom, texted it off, and was like, "Holy crap! No wonder this is what's going on. Like this is what's going on." So, yeah. So what lab should they actually do?
Well, right. So let's start with your story because that's the perfect example of what many, many people go through. They know they're doing right, right? You are a health practitioner and you're a keto expert. So obviously you're not eating donuts and pizza. You know, you're eating well, you're taking care of your health. You even deep dive into, you know, heavy metals and what's in your home and what are you surrounded by, what you put on your body and the toxins and all of it. And yet you still got hit in the side of the head with a thyroid problem.
And you know what? I kept chalking it up to because of, and it, sometimes I think we know too much for our own good. I just kept saying it's the stress. It is the stress of being a business owner during this pandemic, quote unquote. And that's what I kept blaming. I'm like, my cortisol's out of control. My cortisol is out of control. And my adrenals, I've got to get my adrenals back online. And then it was just that thought of like, holy smokes, like my numbers, guys, I haven't talked about this. Like normal for Hashimoto's, like your antibodies should be less than like 60, like ideally should be like 15 or lower. I was at 3866. Like I misread the numbers. I thought I said 3,800 and this it's actually 66. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like my body's been screaming for a really long time.
Yeah.
So
to get that high, you've had that genetic predisposition. So to find your antibodies, just so people know, we're looking at two markers. We're looking at thyroid peroxidase and thyroglobulin. So those are the two antibodies that we test to see if your body, your immune system is literally attacking your own thyroid gland. So that's where we see a lot of autoimmune. And there's more autoimmune these days than not. Right. But we see a lot of autoimmune, and that's literally where your body is confused. I always use the analogy of you have soldiers. You have these little soldiers in your body, and they want to protect you, but they think that your thyroid gland is an invader. It's a bad guy. And so they go out and they attack it. And as they attack it, they're actually destroying it. They're decreasing the size. And then that thyroid gland can't produce the thyroid hormones that we want it to. So we look at the TPO and TGA for antibodies for Hashimoto's because we want to know if someone has the autoimmune form of hypothyroidism or not. And then we have to look at all of the thyroid markers. So this is the big thing, guys. When you go into your doctor and you say, I want a thyroid panel, they're going to test TSH. And they might test free T4, might. Now your TSH could be totally normal. TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a measure of, it's your pituitary measuring how much thyroid hormone is in your body. So it's kind of like a feeler, right? The pituitary goes, okay, do we have enough to work with here? And if the answer is no, it's going to send out thyroid stimulating hormone to stimulate the thyroid gland, kind of wake it up, like poke it, like, hey, come on, wake up and do your job. Produce T4 and T3, please, because there's not enough in the system. There's not enough for this person to work with. So as that number goes up, we know that the thyroid gland isn't working very well because it needed woken up. It needed poked a little bit, needed screamed at. But that number can actually be even functionally perfect. It could be below a 2. In functional medicine, we like it below a 2. It can be below a 2. And then we test your free T4 and your free T3, which are the actual thyroid hormones. That's how we look at the actual thyroid hormone in your body. And those are in the toilet, then there's a problem and you're not going to feel well. You're going to gain weight. You're going to have all the hypo symptoms. You're going to be tired. You're going to lose your hair. So it's all about testing thoroughly. And we also look at reverse T3. That's the other marker. So we have TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and the two thyroid hormones or the two thyroid antibodies. Reverse T3 is the anti-thyroid hormone. And I always use analogies. Again, it's the bouncer at the club. It's if that number is high, and I mean functionally high, I don't mean flagged high on your labs. I mean, if it's above a 12, that's a problem. Then you have bouncers outside of your cells telling T3, the active thyroid hormone, that it can't get in. So basically it's saying, you're in a survival state. You don't need to burn fat. You don't need to lose weight. You don't need to grow your hair. You don't need good skin. You don't need to poop, and you don't need energy to get through your day. And it's protecting you, but it doesn't need to protect you as you're walking around trying to live life and do your job and raise kids and run a business. Like, no, that's great if you're in the ER or in the ICU, but we don't want that walking around day-to-day life. So that's another marker that we have to look at to make sure that your body isn't in survival mode.
I love it. That's the best analogy, because I think that's where we're all at, because we all are in like fight or flight right now after how long, 2 years of a pandemic, like whatever, however long this is. That's what I just keep thinking is like, everybody's living in such a fear-based state at this point. We're seeing their immune systems tank. We're seeing everything else, but then what else is this doing to our bodies?
Right.
All right. So what are your steps, or what are some of the tidbits of information that you tell people? Like when you have these numbers out of control, like somebody even obviously like me, but again, we're doing everything clean. We're clearing it up.
Right. So that's the first step. So for you, you were already there, right? We didn't have to adjust your diet. You were gluten-free already. We know that gluten drives antibodies, but in your case, it wasn't gluten. It was other things driving you into that high inflammatory autoimmune state. So we have to look at that and go, okay, look, Lisa, your free T4 and your free T3 are both low. We need to replace this with thyroid hormone replacement, i.e. medication. So we're using Armor with You, which is a natural desiccated thyroid medication, NDT, and it's derived from the dried porcine and bovine thyroid glands of pigs and cows, mostly pigs in the manufactured drug world. Sometimes you'll find thyroid glandulars in supplement form that use cow. Most of the drug manufacturers use pig, and it's very natural. It contains T4 and T3. So it's not T4 only. We're giving your body a little bit of T3 to support it, to give it that active thyroid hormone so it can do its job. So using some form of, I even hate saying medication because some people are like, I don't want to go on medication. I go, we are replacing thyroid hormones that are no longer being properly made by your body. So we have to use T4 and T3 to give your body T4 and T3 so that it can be happy and it can get to your cells and run your entire system. Every cell in your body needs T3. Every cell in your body has a receptor site on it for T3. We can try to do it naturally, but you're going to be miserable. So in your case, let's get a quick fix here and a quick win and give you that thyroid hormone that is no longer being properly made because your thyroid gland is being beaten up left and right day after day. And maybe we calm down that autoimmune attack, which we're seeing, and we support your body in the process, giving it the thyroid hormone that it needs.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, today I think I sent you my numbers in, and I got back just however many months has this been. It's only been 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something, but that's what I did is like, even things like lectins, I started removing those out of my food because I was just like, all right, I need to look at whatever is causing this inflammation. So I'm happy to report I'm just at 3,100 now.
Coming down. It's coming down. And we can use things like black cumin seed oil, stuff that brings it down. And then just even doing like the biohacking things that you're doing, like the red light therapy that we know helps heal the thyroid gland. So you're doing all the things.
I'm doing it. It's going to come along, right? We just have to get out of the stress of not even 2020. It's 2021. It's a forever stress, I think, that we're going to have, like, unfortunately. All right. So what are some other key tidbits of information for somebody that's struggling? Like, how do they find a functional person like you? I mean, because again, the common thing is how often people walk in and they've been thrown on Synthroid. And then also, well, let's just go with that one first. How do they find somebody that's going to be looking at all this? Because I've actually had to fight with my person today to say, we need a reverse T3. I'm like, why wasn't that done the first time? I thought you guys automatically would do that here. And she was like, oh, well, I don't even know why we didn't do it. And I'm like, really? Like, of all places, I thought you guys were going to do this.
Yeah. So of all the topics that you and I have talked about, I don't think that that I have had the chance to bitch about this one to you because I know you'd be in agreement, right? Yeah. So this has been my soapbox as of late. I have a couple of podcasts on this as well. For doctors to stop using the term functional, integrative, or naturopathic if you're not even going to test someone thoroughly, or if you're going to keep them on T4 or even use T3 but stop at a low dose. I have had so many patients come to me lately saying, but I'm seeing a functional doctor. And I go, well, they didn't even test your reverse T3. How are they using the term functional? They didn't even test to see your hormones. You have more than estrogen as a woman. You know that,
Right.
right? Like they're not even testing that, and they're using the term functional. I had another woman the other day seeing a naturopathic doctor, won't give her more than 5 micrograms of T3. I go, well, that's enough for a cat. So she should go be a naturopathic veterinarian and she'd be on point, but she should not be treating human beings because
Right.
if that's not naturopathic thinking. So don't use that term. So for people listening, you have to look for functional, integrative, naturopathic, and they better be a thyroid specialist. And you drill them, ask questions. I don't even care when you call to find out about their services. Flat out ask: does your doctor test reverse T3? Do they test for free T3? Do they test for the antibodies? Do they use Armour Thyroid? Are they open to using leothyronine or cytomel, which is the synthetic T3? I have no problem with that. Do they use that in their treatment protocol? Do they use low dose naltrexone? There you go.
Right.
Ask that question because that's really going to spin them up. If they're not truly a thyroid specialist, they're not even going to know what that's used for. And we can use that with you too, Lisa. I think you're using that, right? To bring down your antibodies.
We haven't yet.
Oh, we
But yeah,
that
so
brings down antibodies too. Yeah.
because that was, I mean, I've even had another chiropractor reach out to me. There's like, that's a Chris Kresser thing, right? And I was like, Chris Kresser is, I believe, is a chiropractor. Like, first off, he doesn't ever talk about it, but
Right.
so it was interesting to hear that. But yeah, we're doing a lot. But I even thought today, because when I brought up the black cumin, they were like, why are you taking black cumin? And I was like, holy smokes.
Yep.
So it was so very interesting. But yeah, darn it, there was a whole question here and then it's gone.
I know.
Where else? Yeah.
It happens.
It always happens. You were talking about that. I wanted to go through
Wait, you said Synthroid only. So did you something around that?
oh yeah, sometimes it is like just I see that a lot. And I feel like at that point, this is me looking at it from a chiropractic perspective, you know, because I'm also that person that I don't love giving the body something that it makes on its own. Right. And so what I find is like, it's kind of, you know, I've always used the example of like melatonin. I would much rather utilize like an essential oil that stimulates the glands to make melatonin on its own versus doing something where your body says, okay, I don't need to make melatonin anymore. You're taking it externally. Right. So it's the same thing. Sometimes like with Synthroid, I'm like, well, I don't want to turn off my thyroid if I was doing it that way. But I think with Armour, it's a whole different ballgame. Right. So let's look at the difference between the synthetics versus using something glandular like Armour Thyroid is.
Like Armour. Yeah. So T4 only never works. So whether you've been given Levo, Synthroid, Tirosint, I don't care. It's T4. And you're literally giving the synthetic storage form of thyroid hormone. It's not even active. Right. T4 is inactive. Your body does not have a receptor site on it for T4. So you're giving the synthetic storage form of a thyroid hormone and then crossing your fingers and wishing on a rainbow that it converts over to the active form T3. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen because people who are hypo or who have Hashimoto's are inflamed. I usually see insulin resistance. I see just, systemic inflammation, whatever caused it, whether it's Epstein-Barr virus, Lyme disease, exposure to a toxin, anything like that could kick up Hashimoto's and kind of flip the switch and turn it on. And it also creates a large amount of inflammation in the body. So to think that T4 is going to beautifully, smoothly convert to T3 is ridiculous. So that's why I prefer using like NDT, like Armour, which is T4 and T3. And it's very, very natural form. It does mimic what your thyroid gland used to make in proper quantities before you were sick, or what it should be making, or we're kind of stimulating it to, almost like kick up and just kind of help it along. So maybe your thyroid is still intact. You're in the beginning stages of Hashimoto's. It's just not making enough T4 and T3. So as we take down the inflammation and work on your antibodies and work on your diet, lifestyle, stress, cortisol, insulin, hormones, we are also supporting it with a little bit of thyroid hormone replacement therapy, i.e. medication, to help your body out. Now, the synthetics, T4 only, I don't like, but if somebody comes to me and let's say they're on Tirosint, which is a very, very pure form of T4, there's no fillers in it, and they're doing okay, they just are still suffering with symptoms, we can add in a little bit of synthetic T3, and that's okay. Just, let's just give you a little bit to kind of just support the system, or let's change you to Armour And if that still isn't enough, or you have a conversion issue where your reverse T3 is high, then we add in just a little bit of synthetic T3. So we're changing the ratio. It's normally 80-20, 80%, 20% T4, T3 with Armor. So then we're changing the ratio by adding in T3, and we bring it to like a 70-30 or a 60-40 ratio. And some people do better with that. So there's so much we can do. The base answer is we can personalize it to what your body needs without shutting down your own thyroid function if you still have a thyroid gland that's working. Now, if you're in the later stages of Hashimoto's, you're on meds, like period. You have like this much left of your thyroid gland, or it's been radioactive iodine, or it's been taken out or partially taken out, because doctors love to take out thyroid glands before they try to, let's just cut it and take it out. Then you need the medication. There's just no question.
Yeah. Or how many people, I've had a lot of people recently that have had the radioactive just for their thyroid because they were in hyper states. And it's like, well, why? Well, I know. So often, right? Like I always feel like we do a lot better with our body parts in us than when, once they've been removed. Not really cool. All right. So somebody else, if they're getting this diagnosis and they're feeling completely lost, obviously you've given them a lot of hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are different ways? How about let's deep dive. I don't know if we've ever spoke about this with intermittent fasting, and we'll talk about keto too, because this is why I think we both resonate. We both do keto, but again, like I just shared with you before we hit record, I went today, I was just doing all of my wellness stuff, got my new thyroid numbers, decided to share it out on Instagram. I don't typically talk a lot of personal stuff out in the Instagram world, but I put it out there, and so then of course, somebody replied that I've known for a very long time. It's a fellow chiropractor that was like, well, my thyroid tanked too, Lisa, and it's because of you doing keto. And I'm like, oh dear God, like, we're not going to go there. Like, I know exactly what triggered it. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but I can guarantee you, I know why this happened now. It wasn't keto. I've been keto for years. It was not keto. So I know there's a lot of controversy out there regarding keto and thyroid patients, and then also intermittent fasting and thyroid patients. So let's talk about both of those topics and how you teach your patients to eat, and what works best for people. Like, being keto isn't going to kill you, and isn't going to kill your thyroid.
No, it's not. It's really not. So yeah, I love keto because here's the thing. 9 times out of 10, if you have Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, it's affecting your other hormones. And we know insulin is a hormone. So it starts affecting how your insulin signaling is working. And I normally see either insulin resistance or full-blown type 2 diabetes when I'm working with a thyroid patient, just because that signaling has just crapped the bed. It's just not working right anymore. So with that, with insulin resistance, we know that you're in a state of fat storage. We don't want excess insulin. Remember, a fat cell loves insulin. It's like swimming in its happy pool when our insulin is high. And a fat cell will grow in the presence of insulin. A fat cell cannot grow without insulin. So when we keep our insulin high by eating high carb, high sugar foods, we're just perpetuating. You already have a low thyroid or a low metabolism from your low thyroid. Now you have insulin resistance too. It's the double whammy for your metabolism. You basically have no chance of fat burning whatsoever unless we optimize your thyroid and decrease the insulin. How do we decrease the insulin? We lower your carbohydrates. What does that look like? Keto. Hello. Even if you don't want to say the name because you had a bad experience back in, 2005, because you ate pork rinds and cheese and heavy whipping cream like it was going out of style, at least say low carb, low sugar. At least use that, because you need to be low carb, low sugar, gluten-free, which keto naturally is gluten-free, if you have Hashimoto's. And even if you have hypothyroidism, non-Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, you still need to be low carb because you're still going to have that insulin signaling issue.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love how just it is like the 2005, we were all chugging down the gallons of cream, right? I remember the whole, what was it? The transition days within Atkins. What were those first couple? Yeah, whatever it was. Always checking urine. We were going through that earlier today. I had another recording that we did for another summit, and they were like, well, let's talk about, testing ketones on the urine strip versus the blood and all of that stuff. Yeah. So what about with fasting? Because I'm a huge fan on fasting, but I'm a huge fan on really changing up the fasting, not the one meal a day. Like for women, ladies, don't do it. That that's what I did to, tank my health however many years ago that ended me into this whole thing. But I really think if you're fasting 10, 12 hours a day, that's fine. That's actually really good. And it's just to help, again, like you just said, let's get our blood sugar under control. And there's so many other, when we decrease the inflammation in our body by getting rid of the excess carbohydrates, so many health benefits. And again, both of us advocate cyclical keto, like in and out of ketosis. We can increase our carbs, not going crazy, like not wolfing down the donuts and pizzas,
Right.
but like, let's increase the carbs, get your body out of ketosis, and then go right back in.
Yep.
So
exactly.
awesome.
Intermittent fasting. Well, here's the thing, 10 to 12 hours, it should be called living.
Yes.
I mean, that's not even intermittent fasting. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
That's how
right.
you should live your life. And if you can't go 10 to 12 hours without eating, you
That's
should
an
be
issue.
doing keto even more, because
Yes.
you have major blood sugar issues. Like, that's not how the body was meant to be.
Mm-mm.
And you might still be, and again, retro looking, you might still be in the 90s, early 2000s, when you read a fitness magazine and it said to eat every 2 hours to keep your metabolism up.
Nope.
And so you're still doing that. That's why you can't even go 10 hours without eating.
Right.
Have you seen your body?
I never realized it, because obviously you and I don't do this, and a lot of people won't do this, but then there are and that's where I always just tell people, like 10 hours, like if we're sleeping 8 hours, it's easy. Stop eating after dinner. Don't eat breakfast or whatever it is. But I was, gosh, how can I say this? Really, I was very surprised when people started telling me that, yeah, they got up in the middle of the night for a midnight snack, because it wasn't in my consciousness, right? It's not in yours either. But I've had people tell me that. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So I need to go back a step. And I didn't realize how many people actually go and get a little snack whenever, if you're up and you can't fall back asleep, just, I'll go eat something. No, stop it. Don't eat in the middle of the night. We're not meant to eat in the middle of the night.
That's major blood sugar issues right there.
Yes.
If they're waking up, because they're crashing. So they're eating such high carbs at dinner or before bed that they're spiking their blood sugar, and they're literally crashing. It's waking them up. I know. Sometimes we do have to remember that we have to go back to the basics sometimes, because it's easy to assume like 10, 12 hours. Come on, that's just my daily life. And then when I intermittent fast, then it's like a 16, 18 hours.
18, fast. Yeah. No, especially with Hashi, I'm like, oh my God, I'll sleep 10 hours a night. It's done.
Yeah, seriously. But no, I mean, intermittent fast, I don't know how, I never asked you this either. So I'm interested to hear your point of view, but I like doing it. I like telling my patients to do it, and I like doing it naturally. Meaning, if I wake up and it is just a random weird day, because like we're women, right? So our hormones are fluctuating all the time. So you might have a day where you're like, oh my God, it's 7 a.m. and I'm starving right now. And if you try to be type A and go, okay, you know what? Today was a day that I set for an 18-hour fast and I need to make it till 2 p.m. But you're starving from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. You're just increasing your cortisol and you're putting a stressor on your body. Whereas if you, and the flip side is, if you wake up and you go, yeah, you know what? I'm not really that hungry. I could have a cup of coffee, maybe some keto creamer or whatever, and I'll be fine. Oh, but I learned that breakfast was the most important meal of the day and I have to eat. And you force food down when you're not even hungry and you're not listening to your body. That's another problem. So that's another stressor on your body, because your body was trying to tell you, we don't want food right now. Yeah. So it's really about listening to your actual true hunger signals.
It is. I absolutely 100% agree, because that was after our trip this last week. Like I came back Monday and I could tell I had more carbohydrates than I typically would, because I was really hungry Monday morning. And I was like, oh, you know what? It wasn't crazy amount of carbs, but again, I had whatever, just more than what I typically would when I'm at home. But, again, like going back to the recording that I did earlier today, I said, it's just that intuitive eating. However, I hate that name that's being thrown out there now, because people will literally be like, well, I feel intuitively like I should be eating a bag of Oreos right now. No, that's just stupid. Like the fact is like, we just need to really, like you just said, listen to the body. And if it's ladies that are listening right now, listen to her, like listen, because there are going to be certain time periods in your cycle that you crave more carbs. That's exactly what I always just tell, as some women, like, there are a lot of men out there that are like, oh, it's always the week before your period because my wife, she craves carbs the week before her period. No, it's different. No. Some women crave during ovulation. Other women crave during their period. Other ones. So just pay attention and listen. So I don't really ever feel like there's a one size fits all cookie cutter approach, but it's that fact of, the type A, this is why we get along, right?
Yeah, I know.
The type A personality where I muscled through it. And, on top of it, like I was one meal a day, I was 500 calories. I was like low fat. I did everything wrong, but I lost my weight that I wanted to lose, but I lost my health, right? Like when you're losing chunks of hair, and this was all back then. So yeah, like that was I was hungry. I would have eaten my arm if I could have at one point, but it was because I was like, oh no, I have to lose weight. I can't do any of the stuff. And so that's what created a horrific health situation for me years ago that took me a while to climb back out of it. But ladies, yeah, it is. It's just following the intuition, like following how it is. And I shouldn't just say, hey, ladies, like if there's a guy listening to this, because guys can have thyroid issues as well.
Yeah.
We just need to honor the innate wisdom. So
yep. Listen to your body. Absolutely. Yeah. I tried to do OMADs, 1 meal a day, a couple of times. And what I would find, like, I think it's nice to throw in, again, if it happens naturally, like if it's one of those days where you wake up and you're not hungry, and then you just get so busy through the day that you haven't eaten, then yeah, by all means, have 1 meal and have that be like a large meal. So you're not doing 500 calories, you're actually getting in like 1,500 calories in 1 meal. Put some butter on your steak, the whole deal. But I think it is a stressor when I actually tried to do it and tried to power through and do the whole type A thing of like, yeah, today's going to be 1 meal a day. Well, I would be miserable. And then I would overeat at that meal and then be in the bathroom for an hour afterwards. And that's not how, your body's not supposed to respond that way. That's not healthy.
Yeah. No. And I will pull out like a 24-hour fast. And what I always found is like going dinner to dinner was always a lot easier than going like breakfast to breakfast for some reason. That was like a mental thing. Right. But let's talk about exercise too, because I know like one of those things that really, there was a time period of my life. This was prior to even, I don't even know, 2012. And I always laughed. Like I must've been the kid that just needed recognition that I never got, because it was ridiculous. Ran 7 half marathons in 1 year. So I did it for the medals. So even over here, I got them all lined up. But I hate running and I never will run again. But I was so inflamed. And I really think that's probably kind of the thing that might have set up my thyroid 10 years ago with all of that, because I was so inflamed. I was so inflamed with all of that. So I seriously have realized that I am, my body just does best with a lot of weights, minimal cardio.
Yeah.
So how do you find that too? Yeah.
I hate cardio. I hate cardio for myself, but I also hate it for my patients too, because I always say, here's the difference. And this has shifted many people's mindset. Look at an Olympic sprinter, right? And they are, bam, I mean, their muscles are coming out and their legs are cut. They look fantastic, muscular, cut, lean, healthy. Now look at an Olympic marathon runner, even the Olympics. They are skinny fat. You might have an outlier that's like, oh, well, she looks pretty good. Well, yeah, but look at the majority. They're like either skinny and kind of flabby. Their muscles have dwindled down. They just don't look healthy. And it's that pounding the pavement thing. So the sprinter is doing basically high intensity interval training. They're lifting weights in the off season, and their runs are sprints. They're quick 30, 60-second bursts of energy that get their heart rate up, obviously, so it can be considered cardio, but they're not that long, drawn out, pounding the pavement, pounding the treadmill, burning out the elliptical kind of cardio. And that's what happens when you do too much cardio, is your muscle actually eats itself. It catabolizes itself. In addition, you're spiking your cortisol. I mean, exercise is a stress anyways. We know that. And it's a good stress. It's a good stress on our body. So if you're lifting heavy weights, and you're putting that stress on that particular muscle group, that's good because it's going to grow and you're going to get nice. And ladies, you're not going to get bulky unless you're taking steroids. It's going to build that nice, lean, sexy, curvy muscle that we all want. But if you're just doing cardio, you are burning your muscle tissue. You're spiking your cortisol. That's going to screw up your thyroid. It's just going to be a mess. Yeah. So get off the cardio.
Yes. You don't have to slave on the treadmill or the Stairmaster or whatever it is anymore. No. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Go out for a walk, enjoy nature, but no, not hours on the treadmill.
No. And it's such a stress on the body. That's where we're seeing, can I go here? We're seeing some of the pandemic people that are getting hit hard. You know, the argument is initially a lot of inflammation, insulin resistance, diabetes, and then you might have somebody go, well, what about the dude that was you know, a triathlete and he, you know, he got hit hard too and died. Yeah, but think of the training for a triathlon or a marathon. It's so intense that their body is just as inflamed as the
Like,
200-pound diabetic.
absolutely. You're
It's not
absolutely
good for
right.
you at all.
I know. And then there's so many other variables, right? I just had somebody ask me that today. They're like, well, if you're going to the hospital right now, what would you say to do? I'm like, well, I have a
Yeah.
whole lot of stuff right now, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, there is they have one course of care there, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
all right, Dr. Amie Hornaman, tell them where they can find more information about, like, give them your social, give them your website, all that good stuff. Give them your podcast too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast that you're going to be on is the Thyroid Fixer podcast. It's found on all podcast platforms. So you can make sure you subscribe and you'll get all the latest episodes. And then my website is dramiehornaman.com. On there, if you are interested in finding out more about my services, you can book a free discovery call. And of course, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just look up Dr. Amie Hornaman and you'll find me on there.
Awesome.
But yeah, thank you for having me on. This has been awesome. I love talking.
I love it. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.